I rise to speak briefly, given the hour, on behalf of the Greens in support of this bill. Would you just like to take that outside? Thank you. This bill is not only vital, it's a no-brainer. It's long past time that we had proper funding and resourcing in the Child and Young Persons Visitor for the Child and Young Persons Visitor in our state. We have known for a long time that the situation is dire, and I think this was clearly demonstrated by the former Child and Young Persons Visitor, Penny Wright, whom we do thank for her hard work and dedication, who resigned from being the Child and Young Persons Visitor due to a lack of government funding under the previous government. It begs the question, why are we legislating to create roles with these important roles and power, but then failing to resource them adequately? It is a deeply concerning situation where we've had someone in the role who is eminently qualified, who wants to do the job properly, but felt compelled to resign, quoting, "as a matter of good conscience and transparency," end quote, as she would not be able to meet the obligations of the role due to a lack of government funding and support. As Ms Wright said at the time, a role in name only without resources does not enable me to fulfil its functions even to a minimum standard. We have other legislation that establishes similar roles, and that legislation does stipulate that the role is adequately resourced. It hardly seems too much to ask. While this role was initially funded as a 2-year trial, there have been ongoing calls since the end of 2019 to resource this role properly, particularly after the release of a damning report into the Child Protection Department's handling of 2 sexual abuse cases involving 13-year-old girls in residential care. At the time, the then Shadow Minister, now Minister Hildyard, from the opposition benches, said that Penny Wright's resignation was, quote, "devastating for South Australia's most vulnerable children and young people," end quote. She also went on to say that Ms Wright has urged the minister to reinstate funding for the visitor scheme in her last annual report, and the opposition has repeatedly called on the minister to do so. Well, I'm wondering where that spirit and that sense of compassion is from the Malinauskas government right now. We saw an announcement in April that this Malinauskas government would spend $450,000 each year to reinstate the role. But Penny Wright has previously stated that her office put forward a business case that found that the minimum amount of funding needed to carry out the role properly is $1.637 million a year. The new Child and Young Persons Visitor, Shona Reid, also has publicly stated that it is important that all legislation establishing independent oversight roles ensure that a funding commitment clause, and, I quote her, "it is unfortunate that this was missed in the initial drafting of the Children and Young People Safety Act 2017, end quote. That is our responsibility as legislators. We do have an opportunity now to address that oversight and ensure that this essential role is properly resourced to safeguard vulnerable children and young people in our state. And on that, I just want to say these are not criminals, these are children. For some reason, because they're placed in residential care, people seem to think that they've done something wrong. They've done nothing wrong. They've been let down in their personal lives. We should not be letting them down in this parliament. One thing I remember is that a previous minister visited these children and, in front of staff, asked the children what they would like in their residential care to make it feel more like home. One of them asked for a Netflix account. Any teenager, any child in this state who asked their parents for a Netflix account would not be seen as audacious or greedy and would not be told to pay for it out of their own pocket, as these children were told. Again, this goes to the fundamental core problem here, that we are treating these children as if they've done something wrong, not as if they need a home with compassion and care and oversight. We also know that the child protection workers who work in this very important area have been chronically underfunded themselves. And indeed, in 2021, the PSA did a survey over some 6 weeks, and in those 6 weeks there were 150 shifts that were uncovered. That is 150 times in a shift that workers were called in, required to do overtime, just to ensure the minimum staffing in those facilities. And we know what happens when people can't turn up for work because there's not enough workers to do the work that is required, and that is the children get let down again. The children miss out, the children are punished, the children are not supported. The Parliament made an error in the drafting of the legislation that supported this, and we can fix that error now. We've done so with other positions, and I commend the Honourable Sarah Game for bringing this to this place. With that, the Greens strongly support the bill, and we will be supporting any divisions to affirm that support.
Conclude the debate.